You've worked 40 years, maybe 45. You've survived the commutes, the bad bosses, the 6 a.m. alarm clocks, the office birthday cakes for people you barely liked. You've paid into Social Security since the Reagan administration. You've got a 401k that survived at least 2 crashes, and you have, finally, earned the right to retire. So you start Googling, you watch the YouTube videos, you make the spreadsheet, and somewhere in the fantasy, you picture a front porch, a glass of sweet tea, or maybe a garden. Then you pick the wrong state, and suddenly your golden years look less like a Hallmark movie and more like a financial horror film, where the monster is property taxes, and it never, ever dies. In 2026, not all states are created equal for retirees. Some will quietly drain your savings like a slow leak in a boat you can't see until you're already underwater. Some will hit you with taxes on your Social Security. Some will leave you an hour from the nearest hospital. I'm hoping that chest pain is just gas. This video is your warning label. Hit that like button if you're brave enough to see number 1, and subscribe, because trust me, you are not ready for where this is going. Number 10, New York. Let's start somewhere everyone already suspects but nobody wants to say out loud. New York. Imagine this. You retire. You've spent your whole career in Albany, or Rochester, or maybe even the city itself. Your apartment is rent stabilized. Your doctor knows your name. Your kids are nearby. You think, I'll just stay. Makes sense, right? Continuity, community, everything familiar. And then your fixed income hits the reality of living in New York State, and something in your chest quietly breaks. New York has one of the highest overall tax burdens in the nation, consistently ranked in the top 3. The state income tax tops out at 10.9%. And before you say, that's only for rich people, understand that in a state where a modest home in the suburbs of Buffalo runs $280,000 and property taxes average $6,000 to $9,000 a year, rich is a moving target that keeps moving away from you. Now here's the part that really burns. New York does exempt Social Security income from state taxes, one small mercy, but pensions? Partially taxable. IRAs and 401k distributions? Taxed. The state will take a quiet, consistent bite out of everything you've spent a lifetime building, and the cost of living is simply merciless. According to the Missouri Economic Research and Information Center, New York ranks among the 5 most expensive states in the country, full stop. Healthcare costs run roughly 16% above the national average. A 1-bedroom apartment in a mid-tier New York City like Syracuse will still run you $1,200 to $1,500 a month. In the Hudson Valley, where everyone wants to retire for the foliage and the farmers markets, you're looking at $2,500 and up, easy. People on Reddit's r/retirement thread put it plainly, New York is great for everything except affording to live in New York. One commenter described watching their parents spend down their savings in 5 years just on property taxes and heating oil. Another said their retirement plan was simply, leave. And here's the kicker. New York's population has been leaving. The state lost over 300,000 residents between 2020 and 2023, now many of them retirees voting with their feet for Florida and the Carolinas. When an entire demographic is fleeing a state in those numbers, it's not a trend. It's a verdict. The fall foliage is genuinely spectacular, though. So there's that. Speaking of spectacular scenery with a devastating price tag, number 9. California. California is the retirement dream that became a meme. You know the pitch, 72 degrees and sunny in January. The Pacific Ocean, wine country, farmers markets with heirloom tomatoes that cost $11 and are absolutely worth it. Avocado everything. In a different era, California was where Americans went to reinvent themselves, breathe cleaner air, and live their best lives. That era had a price, and in 2026, the invoice has arrived. The median home price in California sits at approximately $840,000 statewide, which is roughly 2.4 times the national median. In coastal metros, San Diego, Los Angeles, the Bay Area, you're clearing $1 million for something a Midwesterner would describe, charitably, as a fixer-upper. Rent for a modest 2-bedroom runs $2,800 to $3,500 per month in most urban areas. If you're arriving on Social Security alone, averaging about $1,900 a month nationally, California will eat that for breakfast and look you in the eye while doing it. The tax situation is almost impressively bad. California has the highest state income tax in the country, at 13.3% for top earners, and unlike New York, California taxes all pension income. Your military pension? Taxed. Your IRA distributions? Taxed. Your 401k withdrawals? Taxed. And the only thing California exempts is Social Security, same as New York, but everything else is fair game for Sacramento's perpetually hungry budget. Healthcare costs are high. The state's homeless crisis, particularly severe in Los Angeles and San Francisco, creates an environment that feels increasingly chaotic in ways that are difficult to explain until you've seen a tent city 2 blocks from a Whole Foods. And wildfires. Let's not dance around the wildfires. If you buy a home in the foothills or anywhere remotely rural and scenic, your homeowner's insurance, if you can get it at all, which is getting harder, will likely run $4,000 to $8,000 a year. Several major insurers have quietly exited the California market entirely. Locals in California retirement Facebook groups tell a story that's becoming a cliché in the best, most tragic way. Couples who spent 40 years building a life in the Bay Area, retired, then immediately sold the house. I took the equity windfall and moved to Arizona or Nevada or Portugal. They call themselves equity refugees. It's funny until it isn't. California will always be gorgeous. It will always be aspirational. It just stopped being practical for most retirees around 2015, and the gap has only widened since. But you want taxes that'll keep you up at night? Let's head to the Midwest. Number 8. Illinois. Chicago is one of the most extraordinary cities in America. World-class architecture, deep dish pizza that is technically a casserole, and I will die on that hill. The lakefront, the blues, the kind of Midwestern grit that New Yorkers secretly respect. Illinois, the state, is a burning building with a gorgeous lobby. The financial situation in Illinois is genuinely alarming, and it has been for years. The state carries one of the worst-funded pension systems in the country. The unfunded pension liability sits north of $200 billion, a number so large it has essentially become abstract. The state's credit rating has been hovering just above junk bond status for years, which is not the kind of thing you want from a government entity responsible for services you'll increasingly need as you age. And then there are the property taxes. Illinois has the second highest property tax rates in the nation, trailing only New Jersey. The effective property tax rate averages around 2.23%, which means on a $300,000 home, a perfectly middle-class home in suburban Chicago, you're writing a check for roughly $6,700 a year, every year, for the rest of your life, in retirement, while on a fixed income. Illinois does not tax Social Security or retirement income from public pensions, which sounds generous until you realize the property tax is quietly clawing all of that back, plus interest. Chicago's crime rate is a constant conversation that has become exhausting in its politicization, but the data is what it is. The city's homicide rate is significantly above the national average, and certain neighborhoods have seen violent crime spikes that make the 10 o'clock news with grim regularity. For a retiree thinking about safety and peace of mind, that matters. The winters, of course, are legendary in the worst way. Lake effect cold that arrives like a personal insult, and wind chills of -20 that turn a simple grocery run into a survival exercise. Snow in April, occasionally snow in May. One longtime Chicago resident on a local subreddit described winter there as 6 months of the city trying to kill you slowly, followed by 6 months of the city being the greatest place on earth. The tragedy of Illinois is how much there is to love about it, trapped inside a fiscal structure that is fundamentally unsustainable. If you're already there, getting out makes mathematical sense. If you're thinking about moving there in retirement, genuinely, lovingly, don't. If Illinois is a burning building, the next state is a burning building charging you a toll to enter. Number 7. New Jersey. New Jersey has been taking abuse from the rest of the country for decades. The jokes, the turnpike cliches, the Real Housewives stereotypes, and for most of it, New Jersey residents shrug, make a face, and pour themselves another glass of Sinatra-era defiance. They are not wrong to be proud. New Jersey has excellent schools, remarkable food, proximity to 2 of the greatest cities on earth, and beaches that are genuinely underrated. It also has the highest property taxes in the United States, by a lot. The effective property tax rate in New Jersey sits at approximately 2.47%, the undisputed heavyweight champion of financial punishment for homeowners. On the median home price of around $500,000, that's $12,350 a year, per year, every year, never stops. It is, as one retiree in a Monmouth County Facebook group wrote, a mortgage payment for a house I already own. The state income tax reaches 10.75% at the top brackets. And while New Jersey offers some pension and retirement income exclusions for lower-income seniors, the phase-outs are sharp, and the moment you cross certain thresholds, the exclusions evaporate. The sales tax is 6.625%. The cost of living sits roughly 20% above the national average across the board. Healthcare costs are high, but the bigger issue for retirees is geographic. New Jersey is dense, congested, and infrastructurally exhausted. The roads are famously terrible. The DOT has a backlog of bridge and road repairs measured in the billions. The transit system connecting the state to New York is aging in a way that feels almost intentional. And if you are not a driver, navigating most of suburban and rural New Jersey without a car is a logistical nightmare that becomes increasingly untenable as you age. There's a local legend, not quite a joke but not quite serious, that the New Jersey state bird should be the moving truck. In 2023, New Jersey ranked consistently in the top 5 states for outbound migration, with retirees citing taxes and cost of living as the primary reason. The demographic of people leaving isn't angry young people. It's retirees who spent a lifetime building equity and are now converting it into a life somewhere that won't take a quarter of it annually. But if New Jersey is expensive, the next state is expensive and smug about it. Number 6. Connecticut. Connecticut exists in the American imagination as a place of tasteful wealth. Stone walls along country roads, covered bridges, town greens with white steepled churches that look like they were placed there by a production designer with a New England fetish. And underneath all of it, a tax structure with all the warmth of a nor'easter. Connecticut consistently ranks among the top 5 most expensive states in the country. The state income tax runs up to 6.99%. And until recent years, Connecticut taxed Social Security benefits for anyone earning above modest thresholds. Pension and retirement income? Partially taxed. The estate tax kicks in at $12.92 million, which sounds irrelevant until you realize the probate system in this state makes a simple inheritance feel like clearing customs in a foreign country. Property taxes average around 1.79%, which sounds lower than New Jersey, but is applied against home values that routinely clear $400,000 to $600,000 even in mid-tier towns, delivering the same gut punch in the end. But here's the thing, nobody talks about when they talk about Connecticut. It is quietly aging and economically stagnating. Hartford, the state capital, has one of the highest poverty rates of any capital city in America. The state's population growth is essentially flat. Young people are leaving. Worse, the infrastructure in many parts of the state, outside of the wealthy commuter corridors near New York, is mediocre at best and crumbling at worst. The healthcare situation is nuanced. There are excellent hospitals along the I-95 corridor, but rural Connecticut is more medically underserved than its affluent reputation suggests. One retiree in a Connecticut town forum wrote something that stuck. I spent 30 years looking forward to retiring here, and about 3 months actually doing it before I realized the math doesn't work. Another replied simply, "The stone walls are pretty though," which really says everything. Let's move south, where the stone walls give way to something considerably more urban. Number 5. Maryland. Maryland sits right in the chest of the Mid-Atlantic corridor, sandwiched between Virginia and Pennsylvania, spiritually sandwiched between almost affordable and absolutely not. It is a state of genuine contrasts. The gorgeous Chesapeake Bay, the rolling horse country of the West, and then Baltimore. Let me be specific about Baltimore, because it deserves specificity. The city has long struggled with violent crime in a way that makes national headlines. The homicide rate in Baltimore City routinely ranks among the highest per capita of any major American city. In recent years, hovering around 50 per 100,000 residents, compared to a national average of roughly 7. That is not a typo. For a retiree whose priorities include basic personal safety, this is not a footnote, it is the headline. Now, Maryland is more than Baltimore. The suburbs of Montgomery County and Howard County are among the most affluent and well-resourced in the entire country. But that affluence comes at a price. Home prices in suburban Maryland average north of $450,000, and the property tax rates, while lower than New Jersey's, are applied against those elevated values with mechanical indifference. Maryland's income tax is a layered misery. State income tax up to 5.75%, plus a county-level income tax that ranges from 2.25% to 3.2%, depending on where you live. Combined, Maryland's effective income tax burden for a middle-income retiree is punishing. Retirement income is partially taxable, with a modest exclusion that phases out as income rises. The cost of healthcare in the D.C. metro area, which covers much of Maryland's population center, runs significantly above national averages. Traffic is catastrophic in a way that stops being funny around year 2. And the summers, humid, heavy, unrelenting, turn every outdoor activity between June and September into a personal negotiation with your own body about whether it's worth it. Or you can afford to live near them, but you can afford to live near them. But the combination of crime, taxation, cost, and climate makes it a genuinely difficult case for retirees on fixed incomes. But if Maryland is complicated, the next state is expensive in a way that felt like a promise gone wrong. Number 4. Washington State. Seattle is the kind of city that attracts people who describe themselves as outdoorsy and progressive and who have very strong opinions about coffee. This is not an insult. Seattle is genuinely magnetic, architecturally interesting, and surrounded by natural beauty so dramatic, it almost feels like showing off. Washington State also has no state income tax, which, before you get excited, is not the lifesaver it sounds like for retirees. Here's the bait and switch. Washington funds its government through a high sales tax, up to 10.4% in some counties, steep property taxes, and, since 2022, a capital gains tax of 7% on gains over $250,000. For retirees drawing down investment accounts, that last one is a new and specifically targeted weapon against your net worth. The housing situation in the Seattle metro area has become one of the defining economic stories of the last decade, and Amazon's campus turned a mid-sized Pacific Northwest city into a competition for housing that retirees on fixed incomes simply cannot win. The median home price in Seattle proper cleared $800,000 in 2024. In the suburbs, you're still looking at $600,000 to $700,000 for anything livable, with property tax bills to match. Even if you move to eastern Washington, Spokane, the Tri-Cities, or Yakima, you're escaping the prices but inheriting a different set of problems. Summer wildfire smoke so thick in bad years that the sky turns an apocalyptic orange, and the air quality index climbs into ranges that sound like they belong in an industrial disaster zone. This is not hypothetical. This is August in eastern Washington, with increasing regularity. Healthcare access outside the major metro is also a genuine concern. Rural Washington has significant physician shortages, and many rural hospitals are operating with thin margins and reduced services. The rain, which everyone mentions and Seattleites are contractually obligated to downplay, is also a real consideration for retirees. Not because of the cold, it rarely snows in Seattle proper, but because of the psychological weight of roughly 150 overcast days per year. Seasonal affective disorder is not a metaphor in the Pacific Northwest. It shows up in actual clinical data. For a state that turns taxation into a kind of art form, we head back east. Number 3, Massachusetts. They did not arrive at the nickname Taxachusetts by accident. Massachusetts is an extraordinary state in many ways. World-class universities, excellent hospitals, rich history, coastline that has inspired poets and painters for 4 centuries. It is also a state that will cheerfully tax your retirement income, your pension, your investment gains, and then send you a property tax bill that'll make you want to sit down. The state income tax is a flat 5%, which doesn't sound punishing until you realize it applies to almost all retirement income, including pensions. Massachusetts offers limited exemptions for seniors, but they are modest and means-tested, and for anyone with a decent retirement income, they effectively vanish. The AARPs and various retirement ranking organizations have consistently placed Massachusetts in the bottom quartile of retirement-friendly states, specifically because of income tax treatment of retirement savings. Then comes the housing market. Boston's metro area has one of the least affordable housing markets in the United States. The median home price in Greater Boston sits above $700,000. Rents in the city average $3,100 for a one-bedroom, above San Francisco's average in recent data, which is the kind of fact that requires a moment of silence. Healthcare in Massachusetts is genuinely excellent. Mass General, Brigham and Women's, Dana-Farber, these are institutions that attract patients from around the world. But healthcare quality and healthcare cost are two different conversations, and Massachusetts is expensive on both sides of the ledger. The winters deserve their own paragraph. Massachusetts winters are not gentle suggestions, they are commitments. Nor'easters that drop 24 inches overnight. Ice storms that turn every surface into a liability. Heating oil costs that spike every time there's geopolitical tension anywhere near a pipeline. For an older adult with mobility concerns, a New England winter is not romantic. It is a serious quality of life issue that becomes more serious every year. One retired teacher in Worcester described it on a local forum. "I love Massachusetts. I was born here. I will probably die here, mostly because I can't afford to move." There's a very specific kind of trapped that is simultaneously comfortable and devastating. Massachusetts has perfected it. But all of this, the taxes, the cold, the costs, is civilization compared to number two. Number two, Alaska. Alaska is the most beautiful place in the United States. I am not being rhetorical. Denali at dawn, the Inside Passage, the tundra in autumn turning colors that don't have names yet. Alaska is the kind of landscape that makes you feel briefly, genuinely, like a small and lucky creature on a magnificent planet. It will also, in retirement, try very hard to kill you. Start with the basics. Alaska has no state income tax and no state sales tax. There is even the permanent fund dividend, a check the state sends to every resident annually from oil revenue, running $1,312 in 2023. These are real advantages. They are also almost entirely canceled out by the cost of simply existing in Alaska. The cost of living in Alaska runs approximately 25 to 30% above the national average, and that's in Anchorage, which is the cheapest major city. In rural villages and smaller communities, the cost of groceries alone can be double or triple what you'd pay in the lower 48. A gallon of milk in rural Alaska can cost $10 to $14. A bag of flour, $12. Fuel for heating, critical in a state where temperatures reach minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit and stay there for weeks, can run $6 to $9 per gallon for heating oil. Annual heating costs for a modest home in interior Alaska can exceed $8,000 to $12,000. The healthcare situation is, charitably speaking, an emergency waiting to happen. Alaska has a severe and well-documented physician shortage. Specialist care in most of the state is essentially non-existent. You fly to Anchorage or you go without. Anchorage itself has limited specialist options for complex conditions. Many Alaskans fly to Seattle for major procedures. Flying to Seattle, as a retiree on Medicare, is not free. And the complications of air travel in a state where weather grounds flights routinely and sometimes fatally adds a layer of medical access anxiety that simply shouldn't exist in a first-world country. Mental health is its own chapter. Alaska has the highest suicide rate in the United States. The isolation, the darkness, up to 22 hours of it per day in winter in northern communities, and the limited social infrastructure create a psychological weight that is genuinely dangerous, and particularly for older adults living alone. For young, healthy, adventurous people with means and grit, Alaska is transcendent. For retirees managing chronic conditions, on fixed incomes, needing regular medical access, and requiring a functioning social support network, it's a beautiful, brutal, isolating bet that too many people lose. And yet, for pure, documented, measurable retirement misery across every category that matters, taxes, crime, healthcare, climate, and pure financial devastation, there is one state that stands alone at the top of this list. Number 1, Louisiana. Here we are. Close your eyes and imagine retirement. You wake up in late July, not to birdsong, but to the sound of an air conditioning unit working so hard it's physically vibrating. You step outside at 8 a.m., and the heat wraps around you like a wool blanket soaked in warm water. The humidity is 94%. You check your phone. It's 89 degrees Fahrenheit, and it will reach 98 degrees Fahrenheit by noon, with a heat index over 108 degrees Fahrenheit. This is not a bad day in Louisiana. This is Tuesday. Louisiana is, and by nearly every objective retirement metric compiled by WalletHub, Bankrate, US News, and the AARP, the worst or near worst state for retirement in America. And in 2026, that distinction has never been more merited. Let's do the full autopsy. Crime. Louisiana has the highest violent crime rate in the United States, full stop. New Orleans, a city of extraordinary culture, music, and food, has a homicide rate that frequently exceeds 50 per 100,000 residents, always placing it among the most dangerous cities in the developed world. Baton Rouge, Shreveport, and Monroe all rank in the top 20 most dangerous cities in America. This is not cherry-picking. The FBI Uniform Crime Report and state-level data say the same thing year after year. Healthcare. Louisiana ranks 49th or 50th in nearly every public health metric measured. Life expectancy in the state is among the lowest in the country, roughly 73.1 years compared to a national average of about 77.5. The state has the highest rate of diabetes in America, among the highest rates of obesity and cardiovascular disease, and a healthcare infrastructure that is deeply strained in rural areas. Many rural parishes have lost hospital services entirely. In a state where you will almost certainly need more medical care as you age, this is not an abstraction. It is a projected cost, measured in emergency flights and unmet needs, all poverty and economic instability. Louisiana's poverty rate hovers around 19%, nearly double the national average. The downstream effects of pervasive poverty on public services, infrastructure, schools, relevant if you have grandchildren, and community resources are real and cumulative. Natural disasters. Louisiana is the most flood-prone state in America. It sits below sea level in significant portions. It is in the direct path of Gulf hurricanes. And the intensification of storm systems due to warming Gulf waters has made this worse over time, not better. Hurricanes Katrina, Rita, Gustav, Ike, Laura, Delta, and Ida have each taken bites out of the state's infrastructure that have never been fully repaired. Flood insurance in coastal and low-lying Louisiana, if you can get it, runs thousands of dollars annually. FEMA's updated flood maps have made this worse for homeowners who thought they were safe. Taxes. Here's the twist. Louisiana's taxes are actually relatively low. The income tax has been cut. Property taxes are among the lowest in the South, and the state doesn't tax Social Security. Financially, the headline numbers look reasonable, but low taxes exist in direct proportion to low services, and in Louisiana, that trade-off is not theoretical. The roads are catastrophic, consistently ranked among the 5 worst in the nation. The public infrastructure has a deferred maintenance backlog measured in billions. You'll pay less to the state and spend more filling your car's suspension every 6 months. The heat, back to the heat because we must, is not a punchline. Louisiana summers are medically dangerous for the elderly. Heat-related illness and death disproportionately affect older adults. And in a state where a significant portion of the low-income population lives without reliable air conditioning, extreme heat events are public health crises. Climate projections for the Gulf Coast through 2030 and beyond suggest this gets worse, not better. And yet, Louisiana has something genuinely irreplaceable. The food alone, boudin, crawfish étouffée, gumbo so good it'll make you reconsider your whole life, is a legitimate argument for moving there. The music is the heartbeat of American culture. The people are warm in a way that has nothing to do with the weather. Mardi Gras is not a party. Say cannot eat your way past a 108-degree heat, cannot eat your way past a 108-degree heat index when you're 72. You cannot jazz fest your way through a Category 4 hurricane. You cannot charm your way out of a healthcare system that ranks with the worst in the developed world. Louisiana is a place you visit and fall in love with. It is not, for most retirees, a place you survive. So there it is. 10 states, some beautiful, some beloved, some genuinely extraordinary in ways that make this list almost unfair, but all of them, in 2026, presenting financial, medical, climatic, or safety realities that should give every soon-to-be retiree serious pause before signing a mortgage. The good news? There are places that actually want you, places where your retirement dollar stretches, your safety is protected, your taxes are sane, and the sun rises every morning without trying to murder you. Ours, we're talking Tennessee, South Carolina, parts of Florida that still make sense, the Carolinas, Arizona with the right expectations. But that's a video for another day. For now, screenshot this list. Show it to your financial advisor. Send it to that cousin who keeps saying they're retiring to New Jersey because they love the pizza. You might save them. If this video helped you or horrified you in the most productive way possible, hit that like button. It costs you nothing and it means everything. Subscribe so you don't miss where we're going next, because we are just getting started. And drop in the comments, which state on this list surprised you the most? I'll be reading every single one. See you in the next one.